You have both your tracks going, Kevin?
Got my tracks going, getting ready for some Crow Couch Potato Theater. What's up, YouTube?
Couch Potato YouTubes, and we are live on YouTube.
All right.
Getting ready here. Hope everybody's being safe this Devil's Night.
Yeah, we're going to have a fun Devil's Night, not a mean Devil's Night. All right. Brought a friend here. Got my own little crow. Look at that. Yeah, he's watching after me.
So what do you normally do on a Devil's Night, Mr. Reitzel?
Go to bed early.
You get ready for trick-or-treating the next day, don't you?
Yeah, I really didn't know what Devil's Night was until I saw the crow. You know, it's because it's a Detroit thing, I guess, and it goes back. So, yeah.
Our good friend Steve Brown's from that area, so he's very familiar with it.
Yeah. Hello, it's Mr. Robert McGregor. Greetings to you all on Devil's Night as well. How are you, sir? Good to see you. Sorry for butchering that Scottish accent. We'll get started here shortly. Hope you enjoy. Good to see you. Oh, look. Nathaniel's in there. Kyle Wagner's personal meeting room. Laugh out loud.
Mm-hmm. That's always my personal meeting.
Is that what you have it listed as?
That's what it comes up on YouTube because, you know. But probably
should I change that to like Fandom Podcast Network or something? Maybe.
Yeah, I think I think it does it every time.
So before we get started though, officially, I mean, if we were to partake in Devil's Night, what would you do, Kyle? Chat room, what would you guys do on Devil's Night? Would you light your nearest lake on fire? I mean,
I know this. I wouldn't be taking shots with bullets.
This is true. I would not be doing that. I'd probably go out and I don't know, eat something I normally wouldn't eat. You know, maybe take a drive to a nice lookout somewhere and maybe watch a movie or something. Is that Devil's Night?
I'm not real sure.
Robert says, if we can forgive Lambert for his, we can forgive you for that kill room of an accent. Daniel, he says he's a Halloween Scrooge. He doesn't, he's not really a thing, I guess, for that. So, yeah. I mean, the night before when I was younger, I was just more excited about getting candy, you know, and I might, you know, if my parents got candy early before Halloween, I'd be getting all this stuff ready. So I would do lame stuff, you know, maybe I would TP a house. That might be a Devil's Night thing. Remember that, Kyle?
No, there you go. That was a Halloween night thing. What are you talking about here? But you know what? Okay, I got everything shared out, Mr. Reitzel. I think we're ready to begin. All of you that have joined the chat, and hopefully more will be joining us as we get going here. This is a very special edition of Couch Potato Theater Live, The Crow. And without further ado, let Devil's Night begin.
People once believed that when someone dies, a crow carries their soul to the land of the dead. But sometimes something so bad happens that a terrible sadness is carried with it and the soul can't rest. Then sometimes, just sometimes, the crow can bring that soul back and put the wrong things right. Welcome to Couch Potato Theater here on the Fandom Podcast Network. On Couch Potato Theater, we celebrate all of our favorite movies. You may own your favorite movies digitally or on physical media. However, when they air on your cable TV, You love what you are watching so much, you don't get off that couch. And that is what the definition of this show is all about. My name is Kevin. I'll be host for this special Couch Potato Theater. We are proud to celebrate The Crow, 1994. And we're also going to celebrate Brandon Lee live here on the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. But I can't go any further without introducing my brother from another mother, my fellow co-founder of the Fandom Podcast Network, and also holds The Crow near and dear to his heart. Please welcome Mr. Kyle Wagner.
Yeah, I mean, when we're talking The Crow, when we first started doing Couch Potato Theaters, The Crow was one of the movies I really wanted to get to. And I know we have done it in the past on Couch Potato Theater a few years back. But you know what? Now that we have the YouTube channel, and to do it live on Devil's Night just feels right. And I'm glad to be doing this. This is a movie that has been very near and dear to my heart since it was being filmed. We all know the stories behind it. We're here, Kevin, I think tonight to celebrate this film, because this is such a good film, and I think has truly stood the test of time. And I think it's one of those films that does define what a Couch Potato Theater film is, because it's one of those films that no matter what time you catch it into the film, you're probably going to sit it and at least leave it on for a little bit until you either have to go to work or go wherever you're going. And it's almost an annual watch event for me. So
it is. It's interesting to talk to Crow fans of when they watch it. And, for the longest time, I don't know why it was kind of a morbid thing for me to watch it on March 31st, the night the accident happened that took Brandon's life. And because it affected me so much in so many ways. And, when we found out the next day, which was, April Fool's Day, we thought it was a joke, I've kind of just watched it whenever. Sometimes I do watch it close to Halloween. I have watched it on Devil's Night, the night that we're doing this tonight. But yeah, it's definitely one of those films that I always watch, and just like you, it holds a very special place in my heart, and we will definitely be diving into that. But Kyle, I thought you would let our listeners and watchers know how they can get a hold of us here on the Fandom Podcast Network and Couch Potato Theater.
Well, there are several ways to do it. First and foremost, if you're tuned in now or watching this on our YouTube channel, obviously you know about it. Kevin and I have created the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. It's been a couple of months now. We love to have you subscribe, give us likes of the things we do here, because not only do you find all of our normal audio podcasts as we share them out on YouTube, but we have special events like this live Couch Potato Theater and other things, including our exclusive End Zone show, which just took a interesting twist with a new format, but we think we're going to have some fun with that. We've got a few other things, but you know what? YouTube, we love you for coming to YouTube, but we always love it when you come to our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com, the home of the Fandom Podcast Network. It's where you can find the feeds for all of our wonderful shows. And of course, you can also use the Podbean app, search for the Fandom Podcast Network, and listen to all your favorite shows from the Fandom Podcast Network on your mobile device. Of course, we are on all major podcast platforms, including Apple Podcasts, which also /iTunes, as well as Spotify, iHeartRadio, and several others. If you want to contact us, you can always do it via our Facebook page, Fandom Podcast Network. If you have something you want to share a little bit more directly, you can always email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can follow us on Instagram, Fandom Podcast Network, or on Twitter @FanPod Network. Of course, I'm Kyle. You can find me on social media, first on Twitter @AKyleW, and also on Instagram, AKyleFandom. Kevin, where can people find you on social media?
You can find me on Twitter and Instagram @Spartan_Phoenix. And of course, here on the Fandom Podcast Network and on Facebook.
And of course, we love reviews as well. And especially when the reviews come on iTunes /Apple Podcast, we leave them there. We love those 5-star reviews, obviously. But you know what? Any reviews that give us anything that can help us strive to make better podcasts, as we like to say around here, to feed your ears. With that, Kevin, it's time to commence Devil's Night. I'm handing everything over to you.
All right. Couch Potato Theater, The Crow. Welcome, everyone. We're honored to be doing this here. And for you Crow fans out there, we hope that you enjoy this show. Devil's Night, the night before Halloween, somewhere in Detroit's dark underbelly, the criminal kingpin Top Dollar's vicious henchmen murder the small-time rock star Eric Draven and his fiancée Shelley Webster on the eve of their wedding. Such is the injustice of the loving couple's untimely death that is as Eric's restless soul is escorted to the netherworld. A merciful crow brings his spirit back to settle the deceased unfinished business on Earth. With the crow as his sole link between the world and the next, Eric Draven's reanimated body shall rise from its cold grave. As a supernatural avenging vigilante, the wrong man will get permission to have his rightful retribution exactly a year later on Halloween's Eve. Eric's time on this earth is limited. Will the eternal lovers ever find peace? All right. I want to ask you real quick, Kyle.
Okay.
Before we get into, we're going to talk about the accident on the set that killed Brandon Lee. And obviously, this is one of the reasons why this film is famous, but it has a history with the graphic novel and all that kind of stuff. And, but when you look on this, The Crow, are you immediately reminded of Brandon Lee's death, or do you look past that now?
It still reminds me of Brandon Lee's death. I think it always will, because for me, Brandon Lee's performance in this film is so outstanding. So there's always going to be a piece of me that's just like what we lost out of this. I look at it too as I love the film itself, but there's always that piece. And I think unfortunately, in a lot of ways, those are always going to be intertwined, because I think it's part of the mystique of this film, unfortunately. The thing for me with The Crow is I find the whole aspect of The Crow fascinating, because it was a small independent comic. It wasn't even put out by any of the major comic publishers at the time it came out. And the movie buzz, once it got heard it was picked up for a movie, that kind of created a buzz on the comic, and people started checking it out. And obviously then when things happened, the comics even went a little bit more crazy, and obviously Crow comics now have become kind of a part of the mainstream realm of comic books. But it's such an interesting thing, the whole circle around the Crow period, not only with the movie and obviously the tragedies that befell it, but just how the Crow has gone through fandom, and how with remakes and sequels and everything, just how all over the place the franchise as a whole has been, but how this one movie still stands out even to this day to a lot of fans. And I think that's what is why doing this it does feel like it's a timeless film.
Yeah. Do you find doing this tonight a little therapeutic as well?
I do, because I think even though we did a Couch Potato Theater a few years back, and I know we've also talked about it with our good friend Adam O'Brien, I think every time you talk about it, especially and we've talked about it too several times off live mic, and I think it's for therapeutic because we're both such huge fans of the movie, and because the death of Brandon Lee affected us both so deeply and just so shockingly. This was one of those things to where I think anytime you talk about it, it's a little bit therapeutic. And I think it's also, when you talk about it, it can be a happy thing, because you have good memories of this movie as well. Well, because I think a lot of people were sad with Brandon's death, but also come out of this film feeling happy because it was such an amazing performance by Brandon.
It's a good point. Yeah, it is. There's a little bit of melancholy in there because, myself, before this happened with him dying, I was a huge fan of not just The Crow and the comic book and seeing it come to life. And I heard about the development. I was really excited. Before that, I was a fan of actual Brandon Lee himself, because I'd seen his early work on movies and stuff like that. And so I was really excited to see how he was going to kind of come into his own and kind of get out under his famous father, Bruce Lee's shadow, and do his own thing, because the kid can act, and he can also kick some butt. He was a great martial artist, and he had his own style that I noticed in some of his earlier films. And we'll talk about that a little bit later. But, when I had, two of some of my biggest fandoms combined together, I was so elated. And then, of course, when the accident happened, I was heartbroken as a fan, just like a lot of us were. And we don't want to spend too much time about all the negativity and what happened, but we do want to address the accident, because we know that if you're a fan of the film, if you're a fan of Brandon Lee, you've heard about what's happened. There was a book that came out years ago that I read too that talked about all of that, and the legal proceedings and how eventually the film was able to get finished and stuff like that. But Brandon Lee died as a mishap on the set. Scene required a gun to be loaded, cocked, and then pointed at the camera. Because of the close range of the shot, the dummy cartridges loaded had real brass caps. Now, to understand what this is, it was a revolver weapon. It was like a 44 Magnum the Fun Boy character had. And you can tell if those guns are loaded or not by looking at it straight down the front of the barrel, because there's a cylinder that holds the bullets and you see the little bullet caps in it. Whereas in an automatic weapon, the cartridge is in the magazine that goes in the handle of the gun, so you can't necessarily tell if it's always loaded or not. So that's why there had to be these brass bullet dummies to be seen inside, be seen from the gun with the camera shooting straight at it. So what happened was, after the cut, the props master, not the arms master, had left the set for the day. Dry fired the gun to get the cock off of the mechanism happening, knocking the projectile bullet into the barrel of the gun. The next scene to be filmed involving that gun was the rape of Shelley. The gun had been loaded with blanks, which usually contains double or triple the powder of a normal cartridge to make a loud noise. When Lee entered the set carrying a bag of groceries containing an explosive blood pack, otherwise known as a squib, the script called for Fun Boy to shoot Eric Draven as he entered the room, triggering the blood pack. The bullet that was stuck in the barrel was blasted at Lee through the bag he was carrying, killing him. So basically, this provided a projectile just like a bullet, and at the range, it hit him through the thing, and I think it got him in his abdomen and then somewhere near his spine, and he eventually was taken to the hospital, and he did not survive that. The footage of his death was eventually developed and used as evidence in the investigation to his death, but as part of the lawsuit settlement, the footage was later destroyed. Lee, of course, is the son of martial arts legend Bruce Lee, who also died in mysterious circumstances before completing the Game of Death movie that he did in 1978. So anyway, that's what happened. This also went on to send huge ripple waves through Hollywood on being very careful with guns on the set, Kyle. We've heard of accidents happening in other movies before. The big Twilight Zone with Vic Morrow dying, with the kid that he was carrying, and the helicopter crash. And there's been some other stuff that's been going on. But I think it took this film to really, for Hollywood to take it extra serious of handling weapons and props on movies.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I know in the 80s there was a couple accidents. Obviously, the Twilight Zone is probably the most famous because of the lawsuits surrounding that and the largest of the film. But we also talk about John David Hexum from Voyagers, who was a young up-and-coming actor who killed himself on fooling around with a weapon on the show Cover Up. And again, very similar thing. The gun
wasn't that an accident too? He was just messing with the gun and he put it to his temple,
and it was, the wad was right there, and it was so close to his temple that and I think Brandon Lee's death was a huge thing because Brandon Lee was so beloved in Hollywood. He was a child of Hollywood. One thing I wanted to address is a lot of people talk about the Lee family curse, and maybe over the years have tried to tie in Bruce's death to Brandon's death.
Right.
Brandon's death was an accident. It was it was carelessness on set. And I know that, now these guns are quadruple checked at least. And I know our good friend over from Highlander Blood of Kings, who we've had honored to have on a couple of times, F. Ron McAsh, has talked to you and I about this at conventions and on podcasts, and just how
F. Ron McAsh is a sword master, stuntman, and actor himself. And when we brought this up, he was you can tell that hit him emotionally as well, because he's had to deal with firearms on the sets before.
Yeah. So, and I know he's been a big proponent and a big member of the push for more firearm safety on sets. And I can't think of the last time I've heard about a legitimate firearms accident on a set. There have been other accidents with stunts and things like that, but I haven't heard anything with a firearm set in a very long time, Kevin.
Right. Yeah, definitely. So let's get into, one of the fun things that I like to talk about are the posters, because posters are a big thing when it comes to Hollywood history, and some of them are very, very collectible if you can find the originals. And when this movie, after the shock, of Brandon passing away, and that they were going to complete this film in his honor, and because people, his mom, his sister, and friends and family are close to him, they really realized they had something special in this film because Brandon was exceptional in this, and we all know that now. But when the posters were released, Kyle, one of the first ones that I remember is at the top, the black poster that said Brandon Lee, and then it had a picture of the crow with the eyes on the wings, and then it said the crow, and then at the very bottom it said soon. I bought this poster.
Yeah, no, there's two posters for me for the crow that really stand out. It's this one, and then one we'll talk about here in a few minutes, which is also used as the DVD cover.
Yes.
I think these are the two that stand out.
Well, that's the one that has Brandon Lee. Let's talk about now, actually. The Brandon Lee at the top, and then there's like a white stripe that goes down like he's coming in through I think it's like the church doorway.
Yeah.
And it says "Believe in Angels," and you see Brandon Lee as the crow, and below that there's the crow and the crow logo.
Yeah, and I know that there's been a couple others designed by fans or used for international things that just, to me, don't feel quite like this. And I think the one thing I really love about the one with the white stripe is it's a shot directly from the film, and it kind of has a grainy feel to it in that shot, and it works so well because it's something that just identifies with this film.
Agreed. Now, what's interesting, there's two other posters that I have seen and also in print as well. I'm going to skip to the last one. It's the international one. I think it was the Italian one where it shows Brandon Lee with his full trench coat outfit with the crow like hovering right above him, and he's kind of has his knee up on standing up, and it says Il Corvo, the crow. And I always thought that was a really cool kind of international poster. I almost bought one once, but I didn't do it. Do you remember seeing this one, the international one?
Yeah, I saw it at a convention one time. There's always somebody there selling movie theater posters and stuff, and I saw it that way. I like it, but I don't like the background art of it. It's the live picture with more of an artistic background on it, and it feels just a little off.
Right. Well, there's another one that came out later that has Brandon Lee dressed up as his crow character. He's shirtless. He's got his guitar strapped around him, and he's got his crow leather pants on, but he's got his makeup, and he has his hands out wide, and it says Brandon Lee, the crow, believe in angels. What's interesting about this picture, though, is that this was part of his photo shoot before he actually started filming the movie. And if you look at him, actually, he's like got the 8-pack, 6-pack thing going on. He's like built, right? He's like in shape. He lost like 40 pounds though later to when he actually started filming this. So this is when he was like working out and stuff like that. But they had him do like, a costume testing, and they took all these promotional pictures.
Yeah. No, again, it's an interesting shot, but you just don't get more timeless than the actual movie posters. I mean, that's
true. Yeah. I love that first one though, where it just has the crow soon. That's one of my favorites. Let's get into some taglines here. Some of them, of course, are, quotes from the film, but we got taglines. It can't rain all the time. Nothing is trivial. Believe in angels, which I think is probably the most famous one, Kyle.
Yeah, I think it's between that and one other. There's two that always stand out for me in this. Believe in angels is one. I'll let you read off the rest, and I'll tell you which one.
Yeah,
the other one is.
The other ones are: in a world without justice, one man has chosen to protect the innocent. Real love is forever, and darker than the bat, which is interesting. We'll come to that.
Yeah. For me, it can't rain all the time.
Yep.
Those last three all felt like they were more marketing type ones for after the film came out. Okay, we got, in a world with justice, one man was chosen to protect the innocent. It feels like it's from a bad movie trailer.
It's like a superhero type, and tagline.
Obviously, darker than the bat, a shot at Batman, and everything like that. But to me, it can't rain all the time. For it's not only as a tagline, but the use of it in the film and believe in angels, I think was just perfect.
The other one for me that is one of the most important ones is real love is forever. I've always liked that one. So let's chime time travel back to 1994, Kyle. When and where did you first see The Crow, and what type of impact did it have on you when you first watched it?
I was all in on The Crow opening day when it first hit the theater, and because I was still living in Alaska at the time. It was about a year before I moved out of Alaska. I went with one of my best friends and his girlfriend at the time, and they weren't even quite sure. I was like, I've got to go see this. My buddy knew about Brandon Lee, so he was in on seeing it. But I had found out about Brandon Lee's accident. I remember initially seeing it. It was USA Network, and they used to have like little 10-minute, not even 10-minute, maybe like 5-minute news updates. And I actually heard about it on March 31st, like late that night, because obviously a 4-hour time difference in Alaska, things like that. So I saw it and I was like, I just heard it and I was like, what? And there was that's always going to stand out for me. And I followed The Crow very closely even before, because I was working in a comic book shop at the time. And so I was aware of it. We were all kind of following it. And then, I went and saw this and I just walked out of it being blown away and incredibly sad too, because Brandon Lee was so amazing in this film, and this film just drew you in, and his performance just draws you in. And I think one of the biggest heartbreaks I had even to this day is the amount of action movies in this type of film we would have gotten out of Brandon Lee's career is just mind-boggling to me, because he was just this was a star-making performance. People knew who he was, but this was going to be the performance that was going to just blow him up. And it was so frustrating, but the film itself was just, I got so lost in it, and it was just so amazing between the visuals, the story, the music, everything. It was everything I needed that film to be.
Robert in the chat says, I had the poster on my walls for years, along with my Highlander poster. There you go, Robert. That's awesome. I saw this movie as a midnight premiere with our local comic book shop in town, which still exists, actually, Metro Comics. We went to they had their own theater just for this screening. I know that was playing in other screens and stuff like that, and all of us Crow fans and Crow nerds, and because they were selling they were selling the original graphic novel before this this movie came out, and I still have my ticket stub for it, and we went and saw it, and I remember going back, seeing it again and again, and I remember walking out of that after that midnight premiere, close to like 2 a.m. in the morning, and everyone was pretty quiet. It was kind of like we didn't really want to talk about it, but it wasn't like we were disappointed in it. It was just that we were kind of just soaking it all in, and kind of, there was some mumblings, people saying, wow, Brandon was really good in that. And I remember mentioning something about the soundtrack and stuff like that. But, when you were talking about when you first heard about Brandon's death, I remember, I think it was maybe like Entertainment Tonight or something like that, because this was before the internet, Kyle.
Oh yeah, well before the internet.
I can't remember exactly if it was Entertainment Tonight or something newsworthy that came up, because there was no Twitter, no Facebook.
No, and I remember in the news short, all I heard was actor Brandon Lee has died on the set of The Crow, and that was it. And I'm like, oh, wait, what?
And we thought it was an April Fool's joke. Because I remember getting a call from a friend of mine or two, because I was the Crow guy. Everyone knew that I was the big Crow fan, and I got calls from people going, oh my God, have you seen this? What's going on? And so, yeah, but my reaction to the film was, because I wanted it to be good. I really did. And it exceeded my expectations, and I was extremely happy with it. And I was yet sad that I would not see Brandon Lee in anything else ever again. But I was so happy that this was, his best film. So, yeah.
I want to ask you real quick, Kevin. I'm assuming you had read the graphic novel or comics before the movie had come out. Because I had, and I had thoroughly enjoyed them. And so I was just curious to see if you had, because so many people, The Crow's become one of those things too, where a lot of people said, oh yeah, I read the graphic novel years before the movie came out. I'm like, no, you didn't.
Yeah. I remember the 4 parts,
Yeah.
And and I love the art, and I was drawn to it because, you know, I was collecting comics, but I wasn't like your superhero comic collector guy. We talk about like G.I. Joe and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and all those other ones. And this, you know, I was into, you know, rock and roll as well. And, you know, I had a thing for goth chicks. So yeah, I had a thing. Yeah. But I wanted to mention that about the following scenes that were completed after Brandon Lee's death, because they shot most of the film, but they went back to shoot the flashback scene of the death of Brandon Lee's character, you know, Eric Draven and Shelley. And this is where the accident then happened. But they had to, there's a few other pickup scenes that they had to kind of connect other scenes to figure out how Eric Draven gets here and gets there. And so when they realized that, and I think they had to put like another, like, I think $10 million on the budget of the film to complete this. They wanted to make sure that they did it right. And one of the scenes is when Eric first enters the apartment after digging himself out of the grave. Footage of Lee walking through the alley in the rain was digitally composed onto the scene where he walks through the doorway. Computer technology, of course, added drops of water to the floor frame to make the water on his back not seem out of place. The shot of Draven falling from the window was made by digitally composing Lee's face, complete with simulated blood, onto a body double. The scene where Draven puts on his makeup was filmed using a double. The face in the smashed mirror was Lee's, but computer altered to fit the shards. And the image of Draven walking towards a window with the crow on his shoulder was a double with Lee's face added during lightning flashes. And when Sarah visits the apartment, we never see Draven's face as a double. And speaking of the double, I never know who the double was for many, many, many years, until that stunt actor has made a name for himself today, Kyle. And that is Chad Stahelski, who was into stunts, martial arts. Of course, he is more famous now for directing the Wick films, John Wick. And he also was a stunt double for Keanu Reeves. He's done a lot of stunt work throughout the 90s. He is a professional martial artist as well. And he knew Brandon Lee. He used to work out with Brandon Lee. He was friends. And when he was called upon this, and he's recently been interviewed, I think it was, I want to say, I forget which podcast what it was, but I know that Adam O'Brien shared it out with his Lethal Mullet podcast post. It's the one with Scott Adkins.
Okay, yeah, Scott Adkins' new podcast. I can't think of the name of it, but I know which one you're referring to.
Yeah, Scott Adkins, who is an action star, has his own podcast, and he had Chad Stahelski, and he talked about this and how he had a similar body type as Brandon Lee, and he was asked to do these doubles. So when you first learned about this, Kyle, and also all these different reshoots, were you surprised that these scenes weren't Brandon?
You know what? No, I really wasn't, because I had seen something on cable where they talked about using the computer effects on Brandon. So, and it made sense, because that's the problem with movies, especially filmed in the 90s. The order's so out of whack when they film things. So it didn't shock me, because I knew that that's what it had done. And the scenes that I found out on, the only one, maybe the lightning flashing, but then after seeing, and this was probably, I want to say like 98, 99, when I saw the special where they talked about it, and it was something on like Science Channel or something like that, where they talked about, because they were talking about the effects with another movie and how actually the Crow helped really develop that technology.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it was very interesting. What I was shocked about was finding out about Chad Stahelski, who I think is maybe one of the hottest names in Hollywood right now, just in general.
Yeah. Yeah. And just a little Highlander shout out. He is attached to the Highlander reboot, if that ever happens. But because John Wick is making so much money, he's still continuing doing that. They're going to do, I think, John Wick 4 and 5 back to back. So
yeah, they're filming those concurrently. So
what I want to mention, though, about those scenes that Chad Stahelski doubled for Brandon Lee in there, when you watch that, though, it's not obvious that it's not Brandon. And that's the brilliance of that scene, because to me, when I first saw that and watched it all those years before I found out that it was a double, keeping his face hidden and not showing it totally fit the scene until you get the kind of reveal later when he starts painting himself in the crow outfit, and then you kind of see that thing at there. It was just done really, really well.
Yeah, no, it was. And again, you think about what the technology was then when we look at it now, especially when we look at, like, when they put in Grand Moff Tarkin into Rogue One, or the aging technology they use and things like that. It's quite impressive, the work they did then, considering what the technology is now.
This is true. Yeah. So the Crow is famous for many, many quotes, and we did some taglines as well. And I picked several here that are my favorites. And Kyle, if you have some of yours, please say so. I love in the beginning when Sarah's doing the voiceover and she says, "A building gets torched. All that is left is ashes. I used to think that what was true about everything, families, friends, feelings. But now I know that sometimes if love proves real, two people who are meant to be together, nothing can keep them apart." What I love about this is that this is letting you know that even though it's tragic, this is a love story.
Oh, that's the thing. The underlying of this film is very much a love story. This is all about his love, Eric's love for Shelley, and what a motivation it is for the events that happen in The Crow.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Probably my favorite line all of The Crow. And it's funny too, because well, the line is when Eric's talking to Sarah, "It can't rain all the time." And there's a lyric in a song that you hear from it was Hangman's Joke, I think is Eric Draven's brand, is kind of skipping and playing that. I always took that as, the sun always rises. It's not always bad, kind of an optimistic approach to maybe things are going down crap right now, but things will get better. That's how I always took that, and I took it to heart. What about you, Kyle?
No, I agree completely. And I think it's very much, it's meant to be a positive thing. It's like, no matter how dark it is, it can't stay dark like that at all times.
I remember when, after I saw the film, I had gone to Disneyland soon after that, and there was a Pirates of the Caribbean ride that's still there. But there was this cool, once you got off the ride in Disneyland Anaheim, California, there was this little pirate gift shop that you would go into. And there was this machine where you could stamp a message on a actual metal pieces of 8. And then there was a hole through it you could attach to a keychain. And I typed in that thing, "It can't rain all the time." And I still have that today on my keychain. Still, cool. It survived all this time. The phrase, by the way, "It can't rain all the time," was inspired by an encounter that James O'Barr had as a teen while living in Michigan prior to enlisting the Marines. The down on his luck O'Barr found himself unable to pay for groceries. Frustrated, he decided to buy the rice, to which the man in the line behind him says, "You can't eat rice all the time." While paying for O'Barr's groceries, the man turned out to be Lee Coughlin, the mayor of Shepherd himself, and he is also the basis for the character Albrecht. And Shepherd is the city in Michigan that O'Barr was in.
Yeah. If you don't mind, can I read the next quote? Because it is actually one of my favorite quotes from the film. This is Eric Draven to Carla, Sarah's mother. "Mother is the name for God on the lips and hearts of all children. Do you understand? Morphine is bad for you. Your daughter is out there on the streets waiting for you." Little trivia about this: at about 42 minutes, the line "Mother is the name for God in the lips and hearts of the little children," spoken by Eric as he drains the morphine from Darla's arm, is a quote from Vanity Fair by William Makepeace Thackeray. Brandon Lee's delivery of this line is so amazing. It was one of the more standout points in the original graphic novel too, but how Brandon Lee delivers this line and the tonal voice he uses when squeezing the morphine out of Carla's arm is just so incredibly powerful.
Yeah, it is. It's a very interesting effect they use as well, but it didn't really hit me till years later of what that really, really means, especially since when I, became a father to my stepdaughter, and I started seeing how kids really started looking up to their parents and specifically their moms, and how strong a line that really is. And yeah, that's a great line. Kyle, I don't know if you know this or not, but I actually have a tattoo of the crow on my right shoulder. It was I took the design from a fan art back in the late 90s. There was a lot of early websites for fans where that they would post pictures of the crow in many different ways. And there was this one that no one claimed that was like an unknown artist, and I loved it, and I had it tattooed on my arm. And years later, after my wife passed away, there was a line that the crow really started to sink in more and more as I got older and after I lost someone that I loved. And it's when Eric Draven says to Shelley, when he's talking to Officer Albrecht in his apartment, he says, "Little things used to mean so much to Shelley. I used to think they were kind of trivial. Believe me, nothing is trivial." Years later, I had "nothing is trivial" tattooed underneath that. And what this meant to me is all the little things that you share with someone that you love that you may forget about, or maybe is not important to you, whether it's a little momentum, a memory, a song, something just small and trivial, means the world to someone else, or will mean much more later when you are reminded of it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I want to hit a point right here, Kevin, since I think it's a good time to bring it up because we're talking about Officer Albrecht.
Yes.
First of all, the fact that that line was ad-libbed.
Yeah. Yep.
But this is something I don't think enough people have ever talked about with this film. Ernie Hudson is phenomenal in this movie. And the chemistry he has with Brandon Lee in this film. I mean, the conversations between Albrecht and Brandon Lee in this film are some of my favorite scenes in this film, whether it's in his apartment or when he finds Brandon when the climactic fight is kind of going down here. There's just such great chemistry between those two. And I really think in some ways Ernie Hudson is the heart of this film.
You're absolutely right. And I challenge you, listeners, to find a better role that he was in. You could say Ghostbusters. That was probably the film that maybe brought him to the forefront. But he's brilliant in this film. And I think you're right. He is the heart of this film. And he is excellent in this one.
Yeah, I mean,
I would agree.
The young lady who plays Sarah, she's our narrator. She's our eyes of the film. Obviously, Brandon is the hero, but Ernie Hudson is the heart. And I think he is actually our connection to the events of this film. The scene that always stands out to me is when they're talking and Eric, using his powers as the crow, gets the memories of Shelley from Albrecht because Albrecht stayed with her the entire time, and just how that shifted how their relationship was, and what Eric Draven, the character of Eric Draven, had just this immediate new caring and respect for Albrecht.
Great point. Yeah, great scene. And since we're talking about scenes, that's one of the things we want to talk about is what are your favorite scenes in this film? That one in Officer Albrecht's apartment is especially the way that he enters that scene as well. And I think Albrecht's like in his underwear, but he's still got his hat on or something like that. That's a great scene. I also love the scene when you have Albrecht getting a little frustrated with the guy making his hot dog, and then you see Shelley come up and then the hot dog vendor guy goes, "Oh, it's a Shelley monster," and then you kind of see, because Shelley and Officer Albrecht got to know each other, unfortunately, through this tragedy a year earlier. So they knew about each other. But I love that, how, Albrecht saying, I'll buy you a hot dog. And then, like, do you want onions? He's like, no, onions make you fart. I love that kind of whole character building scene there. Back to you, Kyle. Is there any other scenes that you enjoyed as well?
The whole movie nails so much of the key scenes from the graphic novel. One of my favorites to this day is when, of course, Brandon uses the lighter fluid. The crow uses the lighter fluid, and we have the fire crow.
Oh God, yeah, classic.
I mean, that's iconic. And honestly, the scene too, when we first really meet Fun Boy and the rest of them in the bar.
Fire it up.
you just really gives you the idea of you really starting to know who you're dealing with here.
Right.
Yeah. And I think those stand out. And one of the things I really liked about this film, as far as scenes go, the use of the camera to make it look like you're looking through the crow's eyes, the actual crow. Yeah. I think that was very well done as well.
Yeah, I love the scenes with Eric Draven and Shelley, right? Yes,
Sarah.
I'm sorry, Sarah. I really love the scenes that they share as well, especially when he saves her before she gets hit by a car, and he kind of gets a little flashback, and that's where he says this line, "It can't rain all the time." I mean, obviously, there's a lot of the revenge scenes that are really, interesting and fun to watch. Out of curiosity, of all of the Eric Draven getting revenge scenes and killing the bad guys that killed him and Shelley, which one was your favorite? We got the Tintin one with the knives. We got the Fun Boy one, of course, in the apartment. We got T-Bird with the car being lit on there. And then you get Skank later on with the big war room shootout. Did you have a favorite?
Tintin's good, but I've always been partial to Fun Boy because not Fun Boy, but T-Bird's death.
David Patrick Kelly's the actor.
Yeah. I always thought that was a good one there with blowing up the car in midair, and that's when he does the crow symbol and everything. Yeah,
that's my favorite too. That's a good one. Because you got the song playing and he's like taped and restrained him in there and stuff like that. Yeah, that's definitely a good one. Yeah. Well, the director of The Crow was Alex Proyas, and it happened to be his first theatrical motion picture. And he went on to make a name for himself, Kyle. I think the next big movie that he did that got a lot of acclaimed attention was Dark City in 1998.
Very much a cult film, but a lot of people really love that. I think too with that one, he was still kind of in that Crow setting with dark set, keeping with that dark feel to it. Kiefer Sutherland, definitely a strong cult following there, but I think his next movie was a big one in 2004. Kevin,
the iRobot with Will Smith. Yeah, yes, definitely. Yeah. He went on to do Knowing, and then he did Gods of Egypt. So I'd like to see more from him. He hasn't, I guess he has a couple of shorts he's done in 2020. But the last feature film he did was Gods of Egypt. Director.
Let's be honest, though. Both Knowing and Gods of Egypt were big budget films that flopped hard.
This is true. So, that probably hurt his reputation, unfortunately. Yeah. Definitely. Now, we're going to get into more of the comic book graphic novel, but of course, this was based off of James O'Barr himself, his book that he's done. But I want to talk about the differences briefly from the comic and the movie itself. Although the tone of the film is very similar to the comic, there were many changes. In the comics, Top Dollar is a member of T-Bird's gang as opposed to heading up a crime in the city like a crime lord. Mm-hmm. Micah and Grange, played by Tony Todd, were also not present in the comic, and there was never any mention about the Crow being a power source. Also in the comic, Skank was not involved in the murders of Eric and Shelley. Instead, a character named Tom Tom was. I remember that specifically. Mm-hmm. Sarah also served a minor role, first meeting Eric after his death, and Albrecht, as he appeared in the movie, is a combination of a street officer named Albrecht in the comics and the police Captain Hook. Another major change is Eric is a mechanic in the comic, and his last name was never mentioned. He was changed to a musician as an homage to all of the music references James O'Barr had in the comic. In the comic, the murders are actually a twist of bad luck, with T-Bird's gang, while high on drugs, ambushing Eric and Shelley when their car breaks down. And in the comic, Eric is usually the one who lasts for 30 hours of intensive care, with most of the events implied as possibly being a revenge fantasy as he lies in the coma. Kyle, when you look back at the differences of the comic, the graphic novel compared to the movie, I know a lot of people, when that happens, they get a little weird about it and a little critical about it. But I don't remember seeing that or hearing about that a lot amongst other fans of the comic. I think they were fine with the changes of him being a musician and stuff like that. I think it seemed to work. What was your feelings on that?
I think it's a combination of two things, because again, I'm of the feeling there are a lot of people out there who said they read the comic before the film that really didn't. And they were, I'm not knocking anybody, but because that comic was so not out there in the mainstream. That comic did not get out there in the mainstream until this film hit. So I as somebody who actually read the comic before the movie came out, it felt fine to me, because I think it fit more with the stylistic choices they made in the film. I know that James O'Barr, and I know we'll talk about this a little later, has issues with changes that were made, but there's some that he did like as well. But the thing about it is I think for what you're making in Hollywood, and in this case, when you're taking a property like The Crow, which wasn't really that well known in the mainstream media, you have to make, I think the changes they made helped to adapt so people could be more relatable to it. And I think in this case, it works because you're not dealing with something that's so publicly knowledge and established. And let's be honest, comic books were looked at a whole different way in 1994 than they are now in 2020.
Very true. Very true. Let's get into the cast, Kyle. We've touched on a little bit before. We're going to talk about Brandon Lee towards the end, because we want to celebrate him and his life and his other accomplishments. But I just want to mention real quick, I think he was perfectly cast in this film.
Obviously,
we have Rochelle Davis as Sarah. I follow her on Facebook. I've met her once before, and I know this affected her as well. Of course, we just mentioned Ernie Hudson as Albrecht. Michael Wincott as Top Dollar. Michael Wincott is a very good bad guy, Kyle. We've talked about him recently on a Couch Potato Theater for at least one movie. What was it? Three Musketeers. You know, he's also a villain in Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves as well.
You know, basically, if you need a villain, you call Michael Wincott.
And he has a great voice too. He's just great. We got Bai Ling as Micah, Sophia Shinus as Shelley, Anna Thompson as Darla. Everyone also remembers Anna Thompson. She was the prostitute in Unforgiven that got scarred, if I remember correctly, and that used as a catalyst to get William Money, Clint Eastwood's character, to find the people that did this. David Angel is Skank, Lawrence Mason is Tintin, Michael Massey is Funboy, Tony Todd is Grange, otherwise known as the Candyman, or Worf's brother Kern. John Polito, great character actor, as Gideon. So yeah, those are the big names. Jeff Amata was in this, of course, friend of Brandon Lee and martial arts expert as well. And we also have an uncredited role at the time, James O'Barr himself, the creator of The Crow. You could see him very well at around 32 minutes. He's stealing a TV set after Gideon's shop is blown up. So give your thoughts on the rest of the Crow cast here, Kyle.
I think the cast was all very well done, because this wasn't a big budget film. And, you know, what's funny about this is, as you look at it, a lot of these guys went on to have solid careers. Maybe nobody had a spectacular career, but everybody had a very solid career. And Bai Ling just has a very bizarre career.
Yes, it's true. I just want to give Robert a shout out in the chat. He says a lot was changed regarding, you know, from the comic book to the movie. He says some for the better. The comic was so much better at dealing with the madness and insanity that wasn't in the foreground of the movie. he's got a great point there. The comic book directly does get into that, and it gets pretty heavy sometimes.
Yeah, I agree with that point. I think for trying to sell this film at the time it was coming out, though, they knew they couldn't go down that path.
It's true. Yeah. Regarding the cast, I just want to say I loved Rochelle Davis in this. I love her portrayal as Sarah, kind of guiding the viewers to what's happening. I love her voice as well in this. Michael Wincott was just great as Top Dollar. One of the best villains I've seen in a long time at that time. Big fan of David Patrick Kelly and everything I've seen him in. And Tony Todd too. He's really good as a Top Dollar's main lieutenant there. I think overall it was casted really, really well. Runtime of the movie is about an hour and 42 minutes. It was released on May 13th, 1994. Budget of $23 million. Opening weekend, just over 11 million. USA and worldwide total gross was 50 million. The Crow was a sleeper hit at the box office. The film opened at number 1 in the United States in over 1,500 theaters, averaged about 7,000 per theater. The film ultimately grossed a little over 50,000, of course. It ranked number 24 for all films released in the U.S. in 1994 and number 10 for R-rated films released that year. Overseas in Europe, the film grossed over £1 million, 1,245 pounds in the United Kingdom, where it was 18 rated. And it did well elsewhere. Kyle, I think if I remember correctly, this was considered not a box office, bonanza, but it did well.
It did better than expected. Especially when you talk about at that time, a May 13th release date was kind of like, we're not sure about this. And, we don't know if this is quite ready for summer movie season. Because at that time, summer movie season actually didn't start to like Labor Day weekend, Memorial Day weekend. So it was like
Memorial Day. Yeah. A few weeks later.
Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah.
And Kevin, as much as I hate to say it, I think part of this was, unfortunately, people went to go see this movie because of what happened to Brandon. Yeah,
I think a lot of people that weren't Crow fans just went out of curiosity. Yeah.
And I mean, I think in good ways that helped the film, but unfortunately under tragic events. So
yeah. Well, critical response, The Crow had an approval rating, has an approval rate 82% on Rotten Tomatoes, with the consensus states that it's filled with style and dark, lurid energy. The Crow's action-packed visual feast that also has a soul in the performance of the late Brandon Lee. Rolling Stone called it dazzling fever dream of a movie. Roger Ebert called it a stunning work of visual style. Now, this is interesting, Kyle, and I do remember the comparison that this movie had with Tim Burton's Batman movies
very much so.
And Blade Runner. And the film was widely compared to them, and critics described The Crow as a darker film than the others. Ebert called it a grungier and more forbidding story than those of Batman and Blade Runner. And Todd McCarthy of Variety wrote that the generic inner city of Detroit, played by The Crow, makes Gotham City look like Emerald City.
Now, just real quick on that, too. You got to remember, we hadn't hit Schumacher Batman yet.
This is true.
We were still on Burton Batman. We're only 5 years from the original Batman and only a couple years from Batman Returns. So we were still very much on the Tim Burton, Michael Keaton Batman fix. And comic book movies really hadn't exploded outside of those Batman films at that time. People were kind of grabbing little things here and there to see what they could do with it. But again, this movie just has something so unique about it. But yeah, there was a lot of comparisons to that. I didn't hear so much the Blade Runner ones till later on, but a lot of Batman style comparisons for sure.
Carl Nordstrom's in the chat. He says, I'll watch anything with Michael Berryman in it. We'll get to that. Yes. There was some negative reviews kind of saying that special effects did not make up for the superficial plot, badly written screenplay, and one-dimensional characters. I don't know if I agree with that. The Crow was first released on VHS on September 14th, 1994. I remember this very well because September 15th is my birthday, and I bought that VHS right away. Released on DVD in January 1st, 1998, and October 18th, 2011, The Crow was released on Blu-ray. Kyle, I just want to throw this out at you. This was I'm holding the double disc collector Miramax Dimensions collector series.
I remember that.
Yeah, and it's great because it has it shows that classic Brandon Lee on the cover walking through the church there, but then you get what critics are saying: spectacular, Chicago Tribune; thrilling, Los Angeles Daily News; action-packed, radio station in New York; and Playboy said a triumph. But it had decent bonus materials behind it. It had behind the scenes featurette, commentary with Jeff Most and John Shirley, profile of James O'Barr. So it was decent. It was decent. Of course, nowadays, Kyle, I had to get the newest Blu-ray. And this is like the classic Blu-ray here that came out, more of a kind of an updated version of The Crow. But then you get this cool retro slipcover that looks like it's a VHS cover on it. You know how those have come out over the last few days. And it's funny because it has the old stickers on them, 3-day rental and action and drama. But my most prized thing that I have here, Kyle, is that I'm holding a James O'Barr audio commentary of The Crow starring Brandon Lee. And this was something that he produced himself in 2003. And I got this from him at an in-person appearance. And basically what this is, and it's got original artwork on the front of the Crow comic book series. And what it is, it's James O'Barr's audio commentary of The Crow, of course, starring Brandon Lee, a 2-CD audio set. And CD 1 has the intro of the first half of the movie, and then you pause the movie at 1:02 and 17 seconds, and then you throw in the second CD. And this was kind of like his own version of the audio commentary. And I haven't listened to this in years, but he did sign it for me, which is very cool. And I do remember listening to this several times doing it, and it's really cool getting his thoughts on that. So yeah.
That is very cool.
I have it digitally. Do you have it digitally, and do you have a hard copy?
I own it digitally. I want to say this. This is one of those films that unfortunately does not benefit from modern technology, Kevin, and I realize this watching it on high def on Sci-Fi Channel. There are scenes where, because of just how 4K works and Blu-ray and everything like that, it's too bright. It's too crystal clear. That's something that really this movie, it detracts from the movie. This movie was meant to be seen on the big screen with kind of a grungy effect to it. You can get away with that on the VHS. You can even get away with it somewhat on the DVD. But once you start hitting Blu-ray, high definition, things like that, and it's not anybody's fault. It's just the way the technology works. It takes a little bit away from this movie. The scene that always comes to mind is the scene where he's playing music up on the rooftop right after he had gotten his guitar back.
Right. Yeah.
It was so dark and grungy in the original show. And now you see it on high definition. It's like clear day and just a really clear and bright shot. And it really takes away from that scene.
So what you're saying is you would rather watch it on DVD?
I'd rather watch it on VHS.
That's a good point. Yeah. So there's alternate versions to this film. 2 different work prints are available at 122 minutes long. There's 103 minutes. And there's a lot of extended scenes and a scene where, where Skank was shot in the leg, and the collector's DVD contains several scenes extended from there too. But the one that I want to talk about, and the one that Carl Nordstrom was referring to, was the Skull Cowboy scene that was removed from this movie. And I was a little disappointed because the Skull Cowboy in the graphic novel is I'm not going to say it's crucial, but it's important because he's kind of like the Crow that kind of guides him. And I think that's what this was supposed to do. And the TV series touched on this as well, but it's a character from the original comic book that was removed from the movie, but was originally planned to be part of the adaptation. The character acted as a guide for Eric Draven between the worlds of the dead and the living. He was set to be played by Michael Berryman, the actor known for the role in his horror cult cult film, The Hills Have Eyes. A very distinctive looking gentleman, by the way. So shout out to Carl Nordstrom there. Do you remember seeing the cut scene of this? I don't think there's audio to it.
There was never on. I remember seeing it on one of the productions, but it's been a while since I've seen it.
Yeah, definitely. I wish they would have thrown it in there. But when you do watch the TV series, it's played by Kadeem Hardison.
Yes, I remember that.
And I think it's actually quite effective the way he does that, because he does because in the movie, the Crow is Brandon Lee's guide.
Yeah.
But you don't get to converse with the Crow. And so that's would have been kind of interesting if there was that one scene that kind of maybe gave some Obi-Wan advice. It would have been interesting, but maybe it just didn't play out well or something. So I'm not sure. But Kyle, we got to talk about probably one of the most important aspects of this film, and is also one of the more well-known things about this film. And that, of course, is the soundtrack. We also have the score as well.
Yeah, there's something I want to address real quick too when we're talking about versions of this film.
Oh, okay.
I want to be very clear to everybody out there. There is not, and there never will be, a version of this film that actually shows Brandon Lee's death.
Oh no, that's
that rumor has been destroyed, been around for years. It's always made me very angry because yes, they knew as soon as they filmed the scene, they were never putting it in the movie. They were never going to disrespect Brandon like that. And obviously became evidence.
The footage has been destroyed due to court order. So
yeah. So I just want to make that very clear, because that's been always a sticking point for me.
That's a good point. Yeah. So soundtrack, Kyle, the original soundtrack, Graham Revell did the original soundtrack for The Crow. The soundtrack album here for the film, and it included work, of course, by The Cure with their song Burn. Became the film's main theme. Jesus and Mary Chain, Rage Against the Machine, Helmet, among others. In Peter Hook's memoir, Substance Inside New Order, Hook relates the New Order were approached to provide the soundtrack for the film with the cover of Love Will Tear Us Apart, their hit as Joy Division, as The Crow, as like Eric, they too had risen from the dead. However, the band's frontman Bernard Sumner vetoed the idea, citing they were too busy with their album Republic to commit to another project. James O'Barr, creator of the original comic book series, was a big fan of Joy Division and had named characters Sergeant Albrecht and Captain Hook as after bandmate Sumner, who was also known as Bernard Albrecht early in his career. Several groups contributed covers. 9 Inch Nails did the Joy Division's Dead Souls. Rollin' Bands did Ghost Rider. Pantera performed Poison Ideas' The Badge. The song Big Empty was not the Stone Pilots' original choice for the soundtrack, but they first recorded the version of Only Dying, which they had recorded earlier as Mighty Joe Young in demo form, but it was replaced following Lee's death. The band's Medicine and My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult make cameo appearances in the film on stage in the nightclub below Top Dollar's headquarters. The score consists originally mostly orchestra music, but some electronic and guitar elements written for the film by Graham Revell. Kyle?
Yeah. I remember, especially in the marketing of this film, the Stone Temple Pilot song Big Empty got a lot of play in the marketing of this film, especially in some of the trailers and things like that. And they really used the Stone Temple Pilots as a selling point to get people to come to this film, because this is when Stone Temple Pilots they were probably at their apex of popularity as a band.
Yeah. And I remember when they did the MTV Unplugged, they played this song as well. And they also received some accolades for it as well. So, but I want to mention the songs on this soundtrack, because this soundtrack, I can pretty much play it from top to bottom. I think there's really only one song on here that I'm not a fan of, but it just starts off great. You got Burn by The Cure, Golgotha, Tenement Blues, Machines of Loving Grace, probably my favorite song on the album. Just the way that song pumps out. You got Big Empty by Stone Pilots, Dead Souls by 9 Inch Nails, Darkness, Rage Against the Machine, Color Me Once, Violent Femmes, Ghost Rider by Rollins Band, Milk Toast by Helmet, The Badge by Pantera, Slip Slide Melting for Love Not Lisa, After the Flesh, My Life with a Thrill Kill Cult, Snake Driver, Jesus and Mary Chain, Time Baby 3, Medicine, and It Can't Rain All the Time by Jane Sperry. What are some of your favorite songs on the soundtrack, Kyle?
I'm like with you. Golgotha, Tenement Blues, Big Empty has always been a favorite song of mine. Darkness by Rage Against the Machine. This is a solid soundtrack top to bottom. I would have loved to have seen the soundtrack come out at a time when Hollywood was really giving soundtracks their due. Kind of back. This was kind of we've talked about this before and other things. This was kind of the dead time where Hollywood really wasn't pushing the soundtracks of films like they did in the 80s or like they've done again recently.
They were kind of starting to fade that out. It was more of an 80s, maybe, late 80s type of thing. But yeah, I mean, I remember this soundtrack being very popular, but yeah, it didn't seem like the studios were pushing them out as much as they were or promoting them as much,
Again, like I think with the film, the soundtrack grew by word of mouth.
Yeah, but here's the big question. Let me ask you this in 1 second. I just want to mention that the songs on here that I'm not fans of are probably Milk Toast by Helmet.
Yeah, not a big fan of that.
Yeah, not a big fan of that one, but I love It Can't Rain All the Time by Jane Siberry. I love Time Baby by Medicine. I can listen to this nonstop though. I can play this all the way through. The total running time was just under 64 minutes. But when it comes to best soundtracks, movie soundtracks of all time, this one always seems to be up in the top 5 for a lot of people. It is for me.
Yeah, I can see that, especially because you do have that chart-topping song with Big Empty.
Right.
For Stone Temple Pilots, because I think that's always something that people, when they look at it, there's got to be one song that really hit the pop culture line too. In this, but I think what makes this soundtrack so good is it's a lot of bands that maybe before they really hit it big, but a lot of bands even to this day that they represent bands that never got that huge push, but always put out quality music.
But then you got The Cure on there, which was, huge. And you got them to have a song on this smaller movie, which I thought was kind of a big coup if you kind of think about it.
I agree. But like I said, I think this is one of those things where this represents what a lot of people thought the soundtracks in the 90s were a great opportunity for bands that were coming up to really get their chance to start to shine.
Right. Robert says in the chat there, The Cure's Burn is still my favorite song on the soundtrack. Yeah, it's definitely a good one. Filming locations, it was filmed a majority, of course, in Wilmington, North Carolina, in the studios there. There was a little bit of stuff done in Los Angeles, but most of it's done in Wilmington, North Carolina, which kind of became, during this time, a lot of stuff was starting to film there. You had Dawson's Creek too in North Carolina. It's kind of become a little second Hollywood over there in the East Coast there. Beautiful little town, by the way. I've been there before. It's a great place to visit. Filming dates, they filmed, of course, February 1st through March 31st up until Brandon Lee's death. And then they picked up again in May and did the reshoots through June. But we got trivia coming up. But before we do that and have more Couch Potato Theater discussion on The Crow, we're going to take a quick break and let you know what other great podcasts are here on the Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. We hope you're enjoying this podcast. We like to continue to feed your ears by inviting you to listen to the Fandom Podcast Network and all of the other awesome shows we have to offer. It starts with our flagship show, Culture Clash, our weekly pop culture news podcast. Blood of Kings, our Highlander podcast. Couch Potato Theater, our podcast celebrating our favorite movies. Time Warp, the Fandom Flashback podcast discussing a year in movies and our favorite pop culture topics. End Zone, the NFL podcast. Good Evening, an Alfred Hitchcock podcast. Union Federation, our Star Trek and Orville podcast. Hair Metal, the 80s and early 90s rock metal podcast. Type 40, our Doctor Who podcast. Lethal Mullet, a 1980s and 90s action film podcast. What a Piece of Junk, a Star Wars podcast. And our newest show, Making Treks, a new Star Trek podcast with a deep dive into the final frontier with host Mark Newbold and Adam P. O'Brien. You can enjoy all of these great Fandom Podcast Network shows on our master feed at fpnet.podbean.com. Fandom Podcast Network is also on Apple Podcast, iTunes, Stitcher, Google Play, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. You can also find us on Facebook under Fandom Podcast Network. You can also email us at fandompodcastnetwork@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram and Twitter under Fandom Podcast Network. Thank you for listening, and remember, respect others and enjoy your fandom. All right, welcome back to Couch Potato Theater, our special presentation of 1994's The Crow. And we're celebrating Brandon Lee as well. And welcome for all of you that are watching us live on the Fandom Podcast Network YouTube channel. And for those that you are listening to the podcast, all of our audio podcasts are also going to head up there to YouTube as well. So make sure you check us out there. But we got some trivia we want to shoot at you here. We got, first of all, even though the movie is based on the comics, from The Crow, none of the birds in the film were actually crows, Kyle. Not like this little guy right here that I have on my mic stand with the light up eyes. There's a crow there.
Nevermore.
They were actually, in fact, ravens, which were much larger than crows and have a longer, more impressive beak. And one of the ravens used in the film, Magic, that was the raven's name, was also used in all of the following movies. I didn't really know that until much later. I remember I would always see crows flying around, my neighborhood and stuff, but I didn't really notice there was a big difference. Did you know that?
I knew there was. I had read that somewhere, and I know whenever they use crows, Hollywood tends to go with ravens just because they are more pronounced on camera.
And plus, you can train them, I guess.
Yeah.
So, I did allude to this earlier. Brandon Lee lost 40 pounds for the role. Director Alex Proyas originally wanted to shoot the entire movie in black and white, closer to the comics, and only using color in Draven's flashback scenes with high contrast theme, but the studio executives didn't allow him to experiment with this approach. This made Proyas shoot much of the movie in a monochromatic color theme mixed with red and dark gray. Kyle, what are your thoughts on this? Would this have worked if it was in black and white?
I don't think at the time it would have, but you talk about the monochromatic color, hence why high definition makes this seem so bright now.
That's true. Yeah.
I think if this were a movie that were come out today, he could have got away with it.
I think you're right. And I would not have minded seeing a version of this in black and white. I think that would have been cool. Didn't they do that with Logan?
Logan did that.
Yeah, I think that would have been really cool. And of course, with the flashbacks, you have them in color. And I think that actually would have been a really cool thing. So, according to James O'Barr, he didn't like the casting of Brandon Lee as the main lead for his comic book adaptation. At the time, he'd only seen him in Showdown in Little Tokyo that came out in 1991 with Dolph Lundgren, and feared it would end up like a kung fu movie and go straight to video. But he was thrilled when he first met Brandon on the set with the makeup and crow outfit. He was amazed by Brandon's take on the character when he spoke the exact lines from the comics. I can understand him feeling a little leery about that, although I will defend Showdown in Little Tokyo. But, after meeting him, I'm sure that he was wowed by that. So, yeah. In the Blu-ray commentary, Alex said that Brandon Lee was unhappy with the way his face paint looked when the makeup department applied it to him before shooting. Lee and Proyas then agreed that it would look best if Lee applied his own makeup every night before going to bed so that when he woke up, his face would naturally look more worn out. I thought this was interesting, Kyle.
Okay, I'm going to go on a little off track here. The Crow look was actually held on for a very long time after the films by the professional wrestler Sting. He used a very similar paint style, kind of went with this black and white crow type look. Mm-hmm. And he actually has talked about this because he uses a different face paint for wrestling, but how he had talked to one of the makeup artists from The Crow, and they told him the story. It's like, there's no way. And they had given him a different he suggested him a different kind of makeup to make it stand out more because of him being on camera live and things like that. So I think this is a kind of interesting vice versa here, where Brandon Lee did take it, and I think it works for the movie The Crow because that really shouldn't look that stand out. The only time it really should have was when it was first applied in the opening scene, and then it should kind of dull itself out throughout the film, which I think is why that works so well what Brandon did.
I think it works when it looks like it's been kind of rubbed off and washed, like he's had it on for like a week. I think it's really effective. And that makeup style on a face became very effective in Batman's The Dark Knight with Heath Ledger's version of the Joker. Because when you see the makeup and stuff on his face, it doesn't look like it was just put on by a makeup artist. It's crinkled, it's wrinkled, and it's dripping a little bit. So it's very effective. It looks very menacing, very menacing. So Kyle, what if this River Phoenix and Christian Slater turned down the role of Eric Draven?
Okay. Absolutely no on Christian Slater. Absolutely just no way. River Phoenix might have been able to pull this off.
Yeah, I could have.
Would have been a different film, but I think it could have worked.
Yeah, definitely. Now this is very interesting here. With the profits from his film, James O'Barr bought his mother a car and a surround system for himself, then donated the rest. He says, quote, "I was really good friends with Brandon, so I felt like it was blood money to me," he said at a comics convention in 2009. "I didn't want to profit at his expense, and I kept that secret for as long as I could. It's not charity if you get credit for it." I can get where he's going with this. I know he got profits from this and such, and he kind of, took care of himself a little bit, took care of his mom. It would be weird. I'm glad he donated money. I think that's good.
It would be weird, and I think he's made enough off of everything else that's come after it and the royalties from that over the years.
Yeah. James O'Barr said he wanted Johnny Depp to star as Eric Draven at this time.
No.
Not right now, yes. Yeah. We mentioned him earlier, David Patrick Kelly. One of Brandon Lee's favorite movies was The Warriors in 1979. Warriors! Which created a breakout role for the classically trained actor David Patrick Kelly, who played T-Bird. So naturally, Lee was overjoyed to have a great character actor known for his villainous roles starring in this movie. Now, this is very interesting, Kyle. Being a music fan, James O'Barr consistently listened to songs of Joy Division and The Cure while shaping and creating the graphic novel this film that was based on. He was delighted that when Robert Smith of The Cure agreed to write an original song for the movie. Although a hugely popular song introducing legions of new fans to The Cure, they only performed the song Burn live once 19 years after the film's release, even though it was often requested. When a fan asked if they played the song at a concert, bassist Simon Gallup replied, "Did we do that one for a soundtrack? I don't remember it." The Cure has since played the song on their 2016 North American tour.
Yeah.
If they didn't play this song and I saw The Cure, I'd be disappointed.
Yeah.
Kyle, we had talked about this on a previous podcast. Top Dollar's nightclub was filmed in an abandoned cement factory called the Ideal Cement Factory in Castle Hayne, North Carolina. It was also used as the filming location for Shredder and the Foot Clan hideout in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that classic and wonderful movie based on a classic video game, the 1993 Super Mario Brothers film. Kyle, are you upchucking over there? What's going on?
Just a little something caught in my throat. I'm dead now.
Kyle does not like Super Mario Brothers like I do.
Actually, there's one here that I'm actually fairly interested.
Yeah, feel free to read some off, man. Go for it.
And two is a little casting couch thing. Cameron Diaz was offered the role of Shelley, but she didn't like the script. More interesting, Eric Mabus, who would go on to play the lead for The Crow's Salvation in 2000, auditioned for the role of Fun Boy.
Interesting. Cameron Diaz.
No, just no. She would have been too beautiful. She really would. At that point, she would have been too pretty for this film.
Yeah, that's true. Definitely. Let's see here. When T-Bird says, the Lake Erie actually caught on fire once from all the crap flowing around in it. It's apparently this did happen, but it wasn't Lake Erie. It was the Cuyahoga River in Cleveland, Ohio, which feeds into Lake Erie. Yeah. That has to be some dirty water, man.
I'm going to say this. Revenge films with supernatural beings, if your name's Skank, it's probably not going to go well for you, because one of the villains of this movie is named Skank. The Wraith from 1986, another CPT film
we covered here. Yes.
Yeah. But there was a character in that called Skank, and again, about another adventurer who's back from the dead. Yeah, don't be Skank.
Don't be a skank in a film. Yeah, you'll your life is short.
Yeah.
For the scene in which the crow attacks Micah, there was a mechanical bird to do the attacking, and it had several controls and wings for the claws, and I think it's just more safe to use a fake bird for that one as well. And last but not least, the final rooftop confrontation between Eric and Top Dollar was not shot on the actual roof of a real church, but on a modular pieces that were sitting on a soundstage floor that were made to look like a Gothic cathedral. Very good climactic scene, by the way, Kyle. I like the way that one played out, and with Eric kind of losing his powers and Top Dollar trying to take him out, and then the way Top Dollar went out was pretty good.
The only thing I'll say about that scene, though, is it is the one set that really feels like it's out of place when you watch the film.
It's true. Yeah, it does. Yeah, definitely. Accolades, A Crow is ranked 37th in IGN's top 100 comic book heroes. The Crow is mentioned in Empire's 2008 list of the 500 greatest movies of all time. Award nominations for The Crow. It got some MTV award nominations for Best Movie. It also got nominated for Best Actor. But the award that did win was Best Song by Stone Temple Pilots for Big Empty. Did win that one. But let's talk about the sequels here, Kyle. This is a contention among fans. And it's interesting because, first of all, I want to talk about the TV series, Kyle.
Yeah, let's start with that because I think there's something we need to address with the TV series.
The Crow Stairway to Heaven TV series was from 1998 to 1999, only lasted one season. Canadian television series. It was filmed and produced in Vancouver by Bryce Abel, starring Mark Dacascos in the lead role as Eric Draven, which was, of course, originally played by Brandon Lee. Kyle, I'll let you go first. What are your thoughts on the TV series called Crow Stairway to Heaven?
The reason why I want to hit this first is because this is by far, outside of the original Crow, the best Crow product, film, TV
interpretation.
And interpretation. Also, Mark Dacascos is phenomenal in this series.
Yeah.
There's some things because it's a TV series you have to take for granted a little bit and understand because it's a TV series, but this was done so well. This series came out in 98 to 99. I would have loved to see this film come out now in the age of streaming and Netflix because it would probably be an absolutely huge hit. And this is one of those times. It was, especially because it was the 90s and you had a lot of shows that were decent, get that 1 year treatment or get that syndicated treatment and this kind of disappear. And this was one of those shows. I love this show and I was just heartbroken when it disappeared.
Yeah, it's interesting because I remember I didn't catch all of it when it originally aired. I had to find it later on to finally watch all of them because this came on at weird times.
Yeah, it was never
Highlander did.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right. This was the best interpretation of the Crow story itself. And it was because it was a TV series, there were some things that they had to kind of change and adapt. But I love the fact that Shelley Webster wasn't a character in this that was kind of like she was dead, but she was kind of like his ghost that would come to him from time to time and help guide him a little bit. And I love the fact that I don't remember the actress's name that played Shelley, but she was really good in it. And she was kind of was able to help him deal with the grief. And then of course we had Kadeem Hardison as the Skull Cowboy that also helped him as well. But it was kind of cool because the bad guys, Top Dollar was a villain that was throughout the rest of the series, kind of had his own crime thing going on, like in the movie. And, he wasn't the only villain episodic thing. But then as the show was going on, there was this kind of conspiracy thing that was teased towards the end of the series that was actually kind of fascinating, but we didn't get to see what happened because the show didn't get renewed, Kyle.
Yeah, I know. And I've seen some interviews with Mark Dacascos, and I think that's one of his biggest bugaboos of his career is he didn't get to finish that story.
TV Guide Presents did release the whole series on DVD. I think it's getting harder to find now, but
yeah,
I'm glad, very, very glad that I have it. But Kyle, let's talk about the other films real quick here. We got let's see here. Okay, so
Crow City of Angels in '96 is our start.
Yes, yeah, that's right. I did not include that one here. So we got Crow City of Angels in 1996, and the sequel was released, starring Vincent Perez as Ash Corvin, where his son Danny is killed by criminals, and Sarah is older, played by Mia Kirshner, and the film has the villain stars rock star Iggy Pop. Got to say, it's let me down.
I think it let a lot of people down. I've gone back and watched this. There's some elements of this that are actually very good. I think Vincent Perez as the Crow was done very well. Obviously, I'm a big Mia Kirshner fan. But the thing that kills this for me is they kill the character of Sarah in this film.
Yeah.
And I think that just turned everybody who was a fan of the original film completely off.
Yeah, you can't do that. But what they were trying to do with this was that, okay, Brandon Lee's Eric Draven is dead, but there's the Crow power that still lives and is still searching for a victim to right the wrongs. And so that's what they were kind of trying to do with this. And with Mia Kirshner playing the older Sarah, they were trying to, bridge that in there. But yes, Kyle, it made the horrible mistake of killing off Sarah, and that's not what should have happened. Plus, I didn't think the soundtrack was that great. I have the original widescreen DVD with the exclusive director's cut, but I honestly have not watched it in years.
Yeah.
So there we go.
One quick note for that too is something interesting in casting was Thuri Trang, who was the original Yellow Ranger for Power Rangers. She died shortly after this movie came out in a car crash, but that was actually one of the selling points in this was that also Thomas Jane was in this film.
I forgot about that. Yeah. Interesting. Okay, so this one, Crow Salvation, that came out in 2000, I actually remember seeing this movie at San Diego Comic-Con at a nearby theater as a sneak preview. And Eric Mabius, who plays the lead Crow in this, was there for the screening. I remember this very, very much. And I remember there was some promotional like one sheets that were released and stuff like that. And it co-stars Kirsten Dunst in it as well. Fred Ward is in this as well. And basically it's Alex Corvus returns to the world of the living to solve the murder of a young woman that he was wrongly accused of killing. But it's interesting because he's on death row and he gets electrocuted and dies, but then the Crow comes back and brings him back to life, and then he goes on his revenge thing to get all the bad guys in this. And there's some police corruption and stuff like that. I have to be honest with you, Kyle. This is the only Crow sequel or whatever you want to say that I still rewatch because I actually like this movie, and I think it was done quite well. I might be in the minority here with a lot of Crow fans. What say you?
Okay, a couple of things about this film. One, I really do like Eric Mabius as the Crow.
He's great in this.
He's great. This is probably one of his best roles. I've never been a big Kirsten Dunst fan. Seeing her in something outside of Wimbledon really kind of turns me off. But I like Fred Ward.
What about Bring It On?
That's all Elijah Dushku. So, big fan of Jodie Lynn O'Keefe. She was doing the show Nash Bridges during this time.
Yep, that's
very
true.
Young, beautiful. Of course, William Atherton is always good in things. This is one of those things where this movie suffered is if this could have been done with a full theatrical budget, I think it could have brought the Crow franchise back. Instead, it got the direct-to-DVD budget, and it just didn't give it enough oomph to
get
it. Because I think they were hoping, okay, if this one can get it back, but the problem was it felt like a B movie. When you watch,
Walton Goggins was in this, by the way.
Yeah.
He was really good in it. But yeah, I mean, I honestly think too, fans that are on the let's never have a sequel made ever again were against all new Crow movies that came out.
I think
and we're going to touch on that because I'm going to ask you that question, Kyle. But I think when it comes down to it, the way this story was done and told, I thought was done quite well. And this one is the one I accept because Kyle, the next one.
Oh God. Oh God. Oh, do we have to?
I have DVD versions of all of these too, just because I'm a completist. But The Crow Wicked Prayer with Edward Furlong, Tara Reid, and David Boreanaz.
Oh, there's a lot. Wait, there's a lot more people in this. You have Dennis Hopper, Emmanuel Chikere, Danny Trejo.
Danny Trejo. Yep. What I love the back of it, though, it says here, the Crow soars to new breathtaking heights. No, it doesn't.
More like crashes and burns to breathtaking lows, killing the franchise.
Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah,
it's really bad. So there was a lot of discussion about remaking The Crow again. And I remember this one. The Crow 2037 was a planned sequel written and scheduled to be directed by Rob Zombie in the late 1990s. However, it was never made. I'm just going to go on record saying, thank God. I do not want to see a Rob Zombie version of The Crow. And there was some more recent remakes that were canceled in 2012 with all kinds of actors that were, Tom Hiddleston was thrown out there, Alexander Skarsgård, Luke Evans, Norman Reedus, Kristen Stewart was even thrown out to play Shelley, Sam Witwer as well. But the one that had the biggest legs, but then just collapsed was on August 10th, 2016. Jason Momoa posted a photo of himself with Hardy on his Instagram account saying that Momoa was cast and the filming was to begin in January of 2017. And I was really excited about this.
Yeah, Kyle. You and I had conversations about this.
Yeah. And May 31st, 2018, it was announced that both director Hardy and star Momoa had exited the project. So this brings us to the big question, Kyle, and there's a lot, maybe a majority of Crow fans. There's even a Facebook page out there that says never remake The Crow, leave it alone. Brandon Lee's movie is it and should be remembered for it. Should The Crow ever be remade?
Okay, so a couple of things here. The Crow has got such a weight on it because of the fact Brandon passed away, but it was also Brandon's star-making performance. And so many people have respect for Brandon Lee and the Lee family and things like that. It's been a bugaboo to touch it. Momoa was the guy that got everybody excited because it was Jason Momoa. And I think a part of this was the financing on this film fell through and Momoa blew up huge. And I think Momoa became too big for a Crow film. Should The Crow ever be remade? This is where it gets tricky. And this is just my personal opinion. I think the formula for how to remake The Crow has been used, Kevin. And it's a combination of the amazing TV series that they did and the idea that they established in the sequel films that The Crow was a power onto its own.
Right.
Here is how you do The Crow in today's modern era. You go to Amazon, you go to Netflix, you give me a 10-episode season focusing on one story of a person doing The Crow, and you can do multiple seasons with different characters.
I see. Yeah. Okay.
I think people would be willing to accept that compared to just an individual movie retelling the original James O'Barr film. Because I think in that format, people would see it a little differently.
Right. Yeah. Well, okay. I get that, and I would enjoy that personally. I'm not one of those Crow fans saying it should never be touched again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I agree with you.
I'm sorry. I disagree. I love The Crow with Brandon Lee. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, but the concept of it needs to be revisited again because it's fascinating. It's a great story. It's tragic. It's about true love. And Robert in the chat, he says what I've always thought, actually, that a remake should be done, I think, with a more accurate version of the original graphic novel comic book. I would love to see a more direct retelling of that to a certain degree. I think that would be really, really cool. And I think that Jason Momoa, from what I remember, was something that's what he wanted to do. That's what the original director wanted to do. But once the director left, Momoa was like, well, I came into this because of you. I'm out as well.
Yeah.
But if they do a movie, I would love to see that. I do like the anthology style series that you're talking about, because I think that would be cool, because there's always been talk of what about a female lead as the Crow. And I know I think that was done through the comic books, if I remember correctly,
Yeah.
Kyle.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But I would love to see that brought to screen. I would love to see a female version brought where that's the main character and she was wronged, and I think that it's a concept that definitely needs to be retold again, just done well. Don't do it, haphazardly. So yeah.
Well, I think too, and I just want to throw out to the chat too, the lovely Aaron Gill agrees with me about a series on Netflix.
Oh, look, Aaron Gill. Oh, what's up, sweetie? How you doing?
For those who don't know, Kevin Reisel's fiance. I think the thing with it too, with doing it on a Netflix series, you don't have to do Eric Draven. You can make reference to Eric Draven, and maybe it's in prequel and like a setup for the series. And I think that kind of satisfies the Eric Draven fans, but doesn't feel the ones who are out there think she should never step on that. However, if you are going to do the Eric Draven story, I agree with you, Kevin. Let's get a more true translation of the original graphic novel.
Yeah, because I love that graphic novel so much, and the character development in that, the imagery, the reference to the music in it as well. It would be a real dark one, but I think you could do it justice. And I would want James O'Barr's version of the Crow to be done like that as well. So yeah. We touched on the comic book series, of course. This was done to help, James O'Barr get over the loss of his, I think his girlfriend or his fiance at the time. He'd lost her, and he did this as a coping method. And, it went on to, Caliber Press. They released, versions of it as well. And we've touched on this, but I want to just mention real quick. I know there's been some re-releases of it. Do you have a graphic novel of this? Do you have a copy of it?
I still have a graphic novel. I think it's a third printing of the original graphic novel, because the original graphic novel had numerous printings, and the original printings of the series are like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle original printings at this point. I do want to say this as far as the comics go. The problem with the comics is that James O'Barr did a couple follow-up series himself, and then they just went off the rails, and it became the marketing. Let's throw the Crow on this. Make this a Crow thing. And it really killed. It was that really killed the franchise, and really actually caused James O'Barr in some ways to even pull back farther from the Crow. And it wasn't until the Momoa remake, and even though Barr was a little skeptical there, but I guess he met Momoa and the guy who's going to direct the film, and actually gave his seal of approval for it when they talked to him about what their idea was for it. So that's what makes that even that much more heartbreaking that didn't happen.
Yeah. There's been lots of Crow merchandise. There's been some action figures and, of course, T-shirts and a bunch of other stuff. But one of my favorites, Kyle, was the Crow collectible card game. 'Cause in the 90s, every company was releasing card games for TV series and movies wherever they can get a license for, but only one set came out. But what really made this card game very cool, other than its great easy playability, was that there was these chase cards that were released that had a different treatment to them, that kind of had this shiny treatment to them, and they kind of had this kind of as they called it, chromium finish to it. Get it? Chromium. But the best part about it was a 9 or 10 card subset of where the normal playing cards were images from the movie with the characters and all that kind of stuff. But the chromium chase cards were all original artwork pieces of the Crow from the comic book series. And so they had this great little chase set in there, and they're very collectible and stuff like that. So, but let's get into Brandon Lee. We want to celebrate Brandon Lee, Kyle. I want to talk about him because of the man himself. Brandon was born February 1965 in Oakland, California, the son of martial artist and actor Bruce Lee and Linda Lee Caldwell. The Lees moved to Los Angeles, California when Brandon was 3 months old. From a young age, Lee learned martial arts from his father, who is a well-known practitioner of course, martial arts movie star. Lee said that the family lived between Hong Kong and the United States. Following his father, while visiting his sets, Brandon became interested in acting. Lee's father passed suddenly, of course, in 1973, with the legacy making him an icon of martial arts and cinema. Afterwards, Lee's family moved back to California. Lee started studying with Danny Inosanto, one of his father's students when he was 9. Later in his youth, he also trained with Richard Bustillo and Jeff Amata. In his teens, Amata said that Lee was struggling with his identity and having to train in dojos, which large photos of his father troubled him. According to Amata, this led Lee to leave martial arts in favor of soccer. Both would reconnect later, of course, in their film career, and Amata worked as a stunt and fight choreographer in several of Lee's upcoming films. Meanwhile, Lee was a rebellious high school student. In 1983, 4 months prior to his graduation, Lee was asked to leave the Chadwick School for misbehavior. That year, Lee received his GED from his high school. Following this, Lee moved to New York City, where he took acting lessons at the Lee Strasberg Theater and Film Institute. Afterwards, Lee went to Emerson College in Boston, Massachusetts, where he majored in theater. After his studies, Lee did local theater, joined Eric Morris American New Theater, and acted in John Lee Hancock's play Full-Fed Beast. Lee said he appeared in several stage productions during this time. But then Kyle, he started acting in television and movie. He said he made his film debut opposite David Carradine in television film Kung Fu the Movie, where he received second billing. And then he starred in his first leading role in the Hong Kong action film Legacy of Rage. He went on to do Laser Mission, of course, Showdown in Little Tokyo with Dolph Lundgren in '99. And in my favorite Brandon Lee film, other than The Crow, he did a leading role in Rapid Fire that came out in 1992. Although the film wasn't well received, critics praised Lee's on-screen presence. Then, of course, in '94, of course, was The Crow. So, Kyle, I want to ask your opinion, first of all, a little bit on his background. What are your thoughts on Brandon growing up under the shadow of his famous martial arts father?
I can't even imagine. I mean, you are talking about one of the most famous people in the history of Hollywood and in the history of fandom culture and everything like that. I mean, Bruce Lee is a pop culture icon, and you can't, especially in the world Brandon lived in, I don't see how he could have escaped his father's shadow. And I think it was something that weighed on him. One of the things you didn't talk about was Brandon had a very interesting relationship going into The Crow with death. In the aspect of he would drive around Hollywood in a hearse and go to graveyards.
Yeah, he bought a hearse with some acting money, and
So Brandon was, and if you watch interviews with Brandon, he was a little bit of a different. You could tell he was just had a different way of thinking about it, and I think that's just because of everything he had been through as a child. I don't see. I mean, Bruce Lee was a worldwide icon, and under the mysterious circumstances of his death, everything, I don't see how that couldn't have affected Brandon. I'm with you. I think he was really starting to break out onto his own, starting with Rapid Fire, and I think that was the first step. I think after if he would have survived The Crow and the success The Crow would have had, whether he had passed away or not, he was going to be a star out of this. I think he would have been one of the major action stars of through the 2000s so far,
right.
And I think he would have eventually done some other type of acting too, because I don't think he wanted to get pigeonholed like that. That's one of the reasons he did The Crow, in fact,
right,
was to show not just be pigeonholed into the martial arts.
Yeah. No, it's interesting. Yeah, because I remember him in Showdown in Little Tokyo. That was the first movie I remember seeing, and I knew who he was when I was watching it. But even though he showcased his martial arts in that with Dolph Lundgren, he was actually funny in that movie. Yeah. He had some, obviously he could act, but he had some, he was very humorous. But it was Rapid Fire where he played Jake Lowe, and it was a dramatic role for him. But you also got to see his fighting skills and how they were different from what I saw from a lot of other action stars at the time, and he had his own style in that, and he was also very good acting wise in that too. I remember seeing Laser Mission. It was kind of this little cheesy, like secret agent type thing, definitely a B flick too. I do remember what was it, the Legacy of Rage. I think he actually spoke Cantonese in that, and I remember watching it on subtitles as well. And I did see the Kung Fu movie later on.
I think it's one of the things too, when you talk about his performance in The Crow, that's what makes it so amazing. He was playing two different characters almost. He was playing the Crow, the vengeful, and when he would act like that, but when he was being Eric Draven with Shelley or Albrecht, and again, I go back to the scenes between Albrecht and Eric Draven, and the whole thing of with the cigarettes, these things will kill you. The little inside, the little joke they had with that going on, and just the humanity. Or one of the things I liked was when he broke into Top. I can't remember if it was with Top Dollar or with somebody else, and he just sits right there. Yeah. He just kind of has that look on, and he played the Crow up in so many different things, with rage, with a dark, twisted sense of humor, and yet with a humanity at times as well. He really showed an amazing acting range in that film.
Yeah. I was fascinated with Brandon Lee's life when I started learning more about him after his death. And I remember I decided to, it took me a while, but I decided to kind of do a tribute for him just because I kind of wanted to step into his shoes a little bit and kind of see what he was feeling and what it was like. Because I remember seeing an iconic picture of him in Paris at Jim Morrison's grave. And years ago, before I went there myself, there was a different headpiece. It actually had like a actual headpiece of a gravestone that looked like Jim Morrison, but so many people had vandalized it. They eventually had to give him like kind of a normal like headpiece slab, not like one that looked like his head. But I remember seeing that picture of Brandon Lee at Jim Morrison's grave there in Paris. And when I went to Paris for the first time in 1998, I made a point to go there because of him. And I got my picture taken at Jim Morrison's grave when I was there in Paris. But when I finally made it to Seattle, I decided to go to his grave site there at Seattle's Lakeview Cemetery. And his grave is right next to his father, Bruce, up on kind of a hill there. And it's a beautiful location. There's a little bench there as well. And I remember I went there by myself, actually, but there was another person that was there. I remember we took pictures of us in front of it as well. And so I kind of felt I came full circle and wanting to give him, the respect that I wanted to and stuff. And I actually have a Crow scrapbook that I've kept all these years of like all the newspaper clippings before he passed away and as he was cast, and then when he was passed away, and includes a lot of the Crow trading cards I got as well, and that type of stuff. And this was the first celebrity that passed away that gutted me, Kyle. That this was the first death that that wasn't a family member that really hit me hard. What about you?
I don't know about like where it gutted me. It was the sense of shock over it because of how we heard about it, and because it wasn't the age of the internet where we couldn't just research it like immediately. And I remember reading articles for months trying to piece all together the pieces of it and things like that. But I also think because that happened during that age, it's added to the mystique of what happened on The Crow. And I think it's added to the mystique of Brandon Lee. I think in today's day and age, where we could have had it completely researched within an hour after it happening, it would feel like, I don't know if it has the same weight per se. And I think too, the thing for you and me with Brandon was he was kind of in our age range as well. So, and he was just hitting that, like I said, he was just hitting that stardom. He was just on the edge of the cup of rising, and just big things happening. And that's what makes it even so the more frustrating. You add into he's Bruce Lee's son, the crazy history there. And it made him such a fascinating figure. And he had this really interesting charisma to him.
He did.
I don't want to. It's one of those kind of charismas where you couldn't explain it; you just felt it.
You're right. He was very charming. You know, he had a sense of humor about him as well. I loved watching interviews with him, and he almost kind of seemed like an old soul a little bit too, which was interesting. Yeah. So let's wrap this up, Kyle. Let's get some final thoughts here. First of all, this has been great. I appreciate doing this with you. And when you talked about wanting to do like a Devil's Night version of The Crow, and I know we've covered The Crow before, but it's definitely worth visiting again because I think over the years too, The Crow has gained new fans, and I think it's important to know more than just the tragic story that happened on set that did take Brandon's life, but to learn more about him and himself and what he's gone through. This movie holds a very special place in my heart, and I was so excited for Brandon's future before this movie came out, and I could not wait to see what he was going to do for Hollywood and what Hollywood was going to do for him. And I get the feeling, Kyle, as much as we probably would have seen him in some action films, I think that he would have done some dramatic films.
I agree.
And I think he would have killed it. You know, I actually could have seen him winning some type of awards for that in that type of recognition.
Yeah, no, I agree. I completely agree. I mean, the film itself is going to stand the test of time. It's one of those Hollywood films that's just iconic at this point, and it's got its place in history. But I do want to say this too, Kevin. We're coming up on the 30th anniversary of The Crow. Wow. It's time. It is time. It is time to move forward and give this story to a new generation. And it's not a knock against Brandon, because I think you honor Brandon by doing that. I think Brandon would want that. Just from what I know of his interviews and things like that, he would want a whole new generation to be able to embrace The Crow. And again, I think there's ways to do it while honoring Brandon, but still bring you what The Crow represented and what The Crow's about. And I think it's time really for a studio, especially now where the way things are in the world, and studios are searching for anything and everything that they can either put on a streaming service or have as a direct streaming film. Obviously, movie theaters are kind of in a weird place right now, and even when they do come back, it's going to be a packed house anyway. But it's something to where I think if you hit it just right, you could catch the pop culture's eye in a whole new way and have people talking about it, much like a Stranger Things did, or much like other things like on Amazon or Netflix have done over the years. I think you could really capture something here if you do it right. And I think if you find the right people, get James O'Barr involved, that's a big key. And I think you really can do it and have something special.
I understand the feeling of Crow fans and the respect to Brandon Lee. And I know that co-star Rochelle feels the same way. They should never touch the story ever again. And I get that. I really do. But I'm sorry, I disagree. Like you said, Kyle, I think that there's so much to this world that James O'Barr created that I think does deserve to be explored some way. But it does need to be done in the right way and with respect. But because we're always going to have Brandon Lee's The Crow. It will always be there, and we can always celebrate it, and I will continue to do so. And I always revisit that soundtrack. I absolutely love it. And this is a perfect contender for couch potato theater. It's a great rewatchable film for so many reasons. And it's a great, wonderful piece of art that is put together. And I'm so happy that this wasn't one of those films that they had to get rid of because of the tragic death of Brandon Lee. I think they made the right decision to finish it and put it out there so we can help celebrate him.
Yeah, I would still consider this easily one of my top 10 greatest comic book films of all time.
Yeah.
And this would easily be in my top 100 films. I mean, I think it's just got such a unique standing and brought such a unique vision to it. And you put everything around it. And it's something when you watch this film, you feel the mythos of The Crow.
Yeah.
And that's not for any movie to make you feel like, I can even say this. I feel more of the mythos of The Crow watching The Crow than I do even watching the Lord of the Rings films.
Yeah, that's a good point. Definitely. Yeah. Well said. Well, Kyle, thank you so much for doing this with me. Great idea. And hopefully that we did The Crow justice. And we hope that you all enjoyed this. And I hope that we did a tribute to Brandon Lee as well. So yeah. Any final thoughts?
Just if you've never seen this movie, or you have someone in your life who's younger, who's a fan of these kind of things, introduce them to this film. On a side note as well, I want to thank everybody. We've done some amazing things with the YouTube channel. This was always our fun Halloween month. And of course, we did Vampire Month here on Couch Potato Theater. Underworld just went out today. Everybody's been so supportive of that. I just want to thank everybody for that. I want to tell everybody it's a weird time, but still have a fun and safe Halloween. And again, this is a movie that is unique. And this is a movie that you're either going to love it or it's not going to be your thing. But I'm going to tell you this. You're going to walk away from it knowing if you know the history of it, going, I can see why people feel the way they do about it.
Yeah.
And I mean, whether you like it or not, I think you'll walk away always feeling that. And you know what? We lost a brilliant star with Brandon Lee that was so on the rise. Kind of reminds me a little bit of what happened recently with Chadwick Boseman. I think Chadwick was a little bit higher apex than Brandon, but Chadwick had so much more to give us. Right. And I felt a lot of things when Chadwick died that I felt when Brandon Lee died.
Right.
And it's like, you lost something special. This film is it in the lexicon of fandom. Respect this film, enjoy this film, share this film with people.
Excellent. Well said, Kyle. Appreciate that. Again, we may disagree on the future of Crow, but we always have this to celebrate, and keep celebrating Brandon Lee. Go back and watch his old movies and watch them through a different lens too. Like I said, Rapid Fire, I love it. I love Powers Booth in that movie, by the way. He's really good in that. If you haven't his earlier stuff, please do so and enjoy that. Just want to give a shout out to my lovely fiance, Erin Gale. Her birthday's coming up, and I want to wish her a happy birthday. And again, thank you everyone for watching and listening. And if you're listening to this, head over to YouTube. Please give us a subscribe there and give us a like. We'd appreciate it. So, Kyle, thank you very much, sir. Appreciate you.
Same to you, man. Get plenty of that good candy on Halloween.
That's right. All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining us here on Couch Potato Theater's special presentation of The Crow and, of course, celebrating Brandon Lee. Until next time, we will see you on the couch. Thank you and goodbye, everyone.
Thanks to everybody in the chat. We are out of here, guys. Have a happy Halloween.